Velcro.
For a mask that can be easier to reach to take off, sometimes you can put a different attachment in these lower corners and even one of these upper corners if you want. And so I'm about to make two masks, one with a snap on one of the bottoms and one with a little piece of Velcro on the bottoms. And with elastic around the neck and around the head that doesn't have the hoodie cords, if you want a tighter fit, it's usually still the 16 inches around the top, but also 11 inches around the neck is usually a pretty even fit. So I'm going to cut my little pieces. For a Velcro attachment on a mask, you want to make sure that you're not going to cause discomfort for the wearer. And so usually we take the hook side, which is the rough side with all the little stiff little loops on it, and put it on the face of the mask. This Velcro is 5/8 of an inch wide, and then we cut an inch of length for this little corner. And then the matching soft side, or the loop side, that will go on the elastic is 2 inches long. And so this can also give you a little more wiggle room if you want it looser one day, or if you don't know the exact measurements of someone that you're making a mask for. Depending on if someone who's wearing the mask is right or left-handed, you can kind of choose the side that you want your attachments for. It seems keen to take your dominant hand, which for me is your right hand, and be able to cross it over instead of taking your less dominant hand and crossing it over and trying to hold something down or pull on something across the body. So on this one, I'm going to put our little hook side of the elastic in the left corner of the mask. I try to sew the Velcro in a little box, and if you want it to really be secure, you can sew a little X in the middle as well. Add an X by going diagonally to our adjacent corner, and across one more time, and then one more diagonal. Beautiful. Okay, here's our little hook side, and now we'll sew the little loop side onto the end of our elastic. So I want to make sure I have the right one. Here's my shorter piece for around the neck, and I overlap probably around 5/8 of an inch onto our little Velcro piece. And this one as well, I just try to shoot for a little box on my little end of my elastic and maybe add a little X in the middle so that it doesn't pull off on me. So with this, you're trying to get enough stitches that it's going to be securely held on, but not too many stitches that you're rendering your Velcro non-functional where you've sewn. So this one seems to be working just fine. And then for all the rest of your corners, we're going to do the same thing as before. You'll attach your little Velcro piece. Make sure that when it wraps around, it'll connect your Velcro. And then for the top elastic, you're just going to want it to go around like the other one that we did with elastic and tie. Ideally, if you're putting attachments like this, you're probably going to end up with a little more stitching on the side than the sides where it's just the elastic. So it's usually keen to keep your pocket on the side that's just going to have the elastic hanging off so that you don't end up with a tiny little gap to try and fit your filter in. And then, yeah, if you want another one up here, usually I try to sew them down with my pleat already stretched out so that when I put it on my face, it can continue to contour around my face and is not fighting me by staying flat and not stretching out over my nose. Here's our finished Velcro mask. We got our elastics on one side with our little pocket, and then here's our little Velcro to attach. This is another one where you can flip it over your head and flip it down. You can attach this first and then have someone help you put it over your head. And it's pretty easy to get out of. Ease and motor skills to get to your mask attachments. You don't have to reach around your head or anything. And next we'll move on to snaps in a similar fashion.
Snaps.
This is snap tape. It's got your little, you know, your poppers if you're British on either side. And you can buy it at Joann's for like very expensive. And you can also find it on Etsy. You can find it on Amazon if that's, you know, the means that you got. And we're just going to be using one little chunk of it today to put on a mask to make a little snap mask. So I'm just going to leave it snapped and cut right in the center of these two snaps. And then discard and feast my eyes upon these two babies. Okay, so a snap has an outie side and an innie side, and it's way more comfortable to put your outie side on your mask so that whenever you're trying to get your snap closed, you're not running around with this little pokey bit trying to find your other side of your snap. So first, we're going to attach this to the corner of the mask that we want. And I do that by folding back these raw edges first and then sewing down on either side of our actual little metal snap in the middle. To avoid potentially hurting myself by breaking a needle on this little snap, I am first going to switch out my regular machine foot for my little zipper foot, which has these spaces for when you're sewing next to a zipper so that you're not running over it or going over it with your foot. And I think I'm going to put it on the right side so that my snap will run on the right side of my foot, and I'll be stitching to the left of it. And then I'm also going to be wearing some goggles just in case my best laid plans go awry. And if you want some extra help, you can glue these little sides back behind so that they're not trying to escape while you're sewing them down. And you can do that with pretty much any type of glue since it only needs to hold for a little bit. It's not really your actual method of attachment, but I'm just going to see if I can wing it. Okay, so here I will place my little snap. Put my thread around my foot, and then I'll try to place it as perfectly as possible before even putting my foot down, and then try for my best of luck by putting my needle down first. And to be honest, I might even do a couple stitches without the foot and just with the hand crank, just to make sure I got a little bit of good luck. Ooh. All right, that didn't go so bad.
No shame in hand crank.
Yeah, no shame in the hand crank, because it gives you more control. And then yeah, I end up with a tiny little row of stitching on one side, and then I'll just flip this around and repeat on the other side. So perhaps even more challenging is putting our little tiny piece of snap tape around our elastic. This is 3/8 of an inch elastic, and I feel like I can either on some days feel more comfortable just wrapping my little edges around the elastic, and on other days wrapping them into a separate little burrito that I just sew on top of my elastic. This houses our little raw edges a little better, so I think I'm going to try this way today. But the good thing about this little innie side of the snap is that it has a better time moving under our zipper foot. So start right here, do a little hand cranking. The tough part about the elastic is that the feed dogs cannot get a good hold on it because it's so thin, and it really wants your foot to have more of a surface to be pushing against. So this is definitely a, oh geez, it's kind of a big ask from a sewing machine. But you can do a stitch, lift your foot, move back 1/16 of an inch, do another stitch. There's nothing wrong with that. Because in the end, you'll get the result that you want. You can see where I was kind of avoiding my little snap and I had a little kink, but it's attached, so what am I complaining about? All right, here we go. Try for the other side, and then we'll attach our elastics to our mask. To attach our little elastics, one method to figure out, you know, which side of your elastic you want attached to this corner is to just kind of mime it out. And so here I'm going to loop it around. And if I want it pointing out this way, but I want to tuck my little corner in, I'll go like this, and then just kind of work backwards, unsnap it, and then flip it back out so that I know that I'm starting right here. And so yeah, just like this, you're going to do this corner, and then we got our little head loop that will attach on the top corners, and then we'll be done. Here's our finished snap mask. No eyes lost in the making, and I feel pretty confident with my little stitching here, even though it gets a little rat's nesty in the back. Everything is attached and pretty secure.
These masks are good for if you are disabled and can't do like ties or things like that, but the Velcro might not be strong enough for like your daily movements of like being super active or something like that. Magnets.
Our final mask is going to be a mask with a little magnet attachment down here. We have these sewing magnets that are from Apex Magnet. You can see one is the negative pole and one is the positive pole, and then they stick together like this. And they also have this really thin, plasticky little housing that they're in that you can sew around the edges of and cut to shape, which sometimes I like to cut around the edges to make it a little smaller to fit onto our masks. But it's pretty easy to fit these onto your mask, since it's simply just placing them on and sewing them down. But if you don't have the means to get your hands on these little babies, and you just have some similarly sized, similarly powered magnets, nothing dangerous like, you know, earth magnets, but if you have something like this that doesn't have its own little housing, you can kind of just sew it into a little pocket in between two layers of fabric and then sew around, carefully avoiding your magnet in the middle, and kind of have a similar effect. So since it seems a little big and is kind of butting into our pleat here, I think I'm gonna cut about 1/8 or 3/16 of an inch off of every little side that I have on this little magnet to see if we can fit it a little better and still get our stitching down. This will probably fit a little better. Put the inside of our magnet face up. And then yeah, I bet I could even kind of walk around this magnet just right around the circle perimeter of it and then get a pretty good connection. So I ended up changing back to my little zipper foot so that I have a little more room to get around my magnet. It's a good idea to turn your machine off when you're doing that, so there's no funny business going on with the needle. And I have my needle on the left side of the foot this time around. And I'm gonna nestle my little magnet into my pleat and start sewing around. So when sewing around curves, you just do a lot more lifting of your foot, pivoting, and putting it back down, doing a few more stitches, and then doing it all over again, so that you get closer to the edge with every turn. Kind of pull my pleat out of the way. Alright, I made sure that my stitches kind of overlapped at the beginning and the end so that they'll hold on a little better. And yeah, since I got my stitches so close to the magnet, I have some more of the plastic housing that I can trim off so that it doesn't poke me in the face or anything like that. So I'll try to avoid the mask, but kind of smooth out my edges. Alright, so obviously, in our case, our little magnet's a little wider than our 3/8 of an inch elastic that we're using. So we're definitely going to have to trim some down here. But it looks like if we just are careful not to cut right into the little bubble that our magnet is floating around in, it'll stay pretty secure and we can sew on either edge of it like we did on the snap. So I'm going to kind of make a little ellipse shape. Here's our little football shape. And I'm going to make sure that my magnet is facing out from my elastic, and I'm going to sew on one side and then sew on the other side. The challenge here is that your magnet wants to stick to your machine. So you just have to give it a little more coaxing to get through. But the feed dogs tend to be okay and tend to be able to do their work despite a sticky magnet. It doesn't seem to be too much of a problem, but something to keep in mind is you might want to have wider stitches so that you don't end up just perforating the plastic and ripping your little magnet off by making yourself a cute little perforated edge. So I think I'm going to change my stitch length from a 2.5 to a 3 so that I can still get a few stitches across, but not ruin my plastic housing. Here is our little piece of elastic with our little football with a magnet in it. And if you do want to cut some edges off here, you can kind of see if it needs to be a little slimmer when it's on here so it's not touching on your face or anything. I could probably cut off a little here next to this little seam allowance, but other than that, we just do what we did before, you know, connect all of our elastic corners in the right spot, and then we'll be done with this one as well. Alright, here's our completed magnet mask. These are really nice because it kind of cuts down on the fine motor skills and kind of the strength that you need to fasten your mask. It'll do some of that work for you.
Check out the rest of the Radical Fit playlist on the YOUmediaChicago YouTube channel. We would love to see the projects you are working on, so use the hashtags CPL Radical Fit, YOUmedia, and YOUmediaChicago, and tag us on Instagram and Twitter at YOUmediaChicago. Or find us on our Facebook, YOUmedia at Chicago Public Library.